Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's good to be here. It's a blessing to be able to share with you this morning. I would like to share a personal story with you, but before I do, I have a verse. Psalm 37, 23 and 24. The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. So my story begins like this. We were on a trip back home to my home state of Washington in the United States. And in my home region, there's a lot of outdoor activities. And so typically we'll go camping or backpacking. And so this particular year, this last August, my wife suggested that we go on a couple's backpacking trip overnight for our anniversary. Our anniversary is on August 23rd. So it sounded like a good idea. And so I looked up the various opportunities that we had to go to different trails and found this trip called Mildred Lakes. And this place is deep in the mountains. It's in a basin in the mountains, and there are 3 lakes situated there. And it's about a 6-mile hike to get in. So we made our preparations, got all our equipment together, our tent and our sleeping bags and all those things. Left the kids with my folks. And then I did some internet research, and there are some trip reports for whatever trail that you decide to go on, and hikers who have been there, they'll give you a report on the condition of the trail and everything. And they said, what a beautiful place this is, right? It's remote. I said, how romantic. I took my wife there on the anniversary. And it was a bit difficult, but they said for a person that's in decent shape, no problem. The only thing that concerned me was that the trail itself was not maintained by the Forest Service. And so that means it's more, they call it a fisherman's trail, meaning there are some blowdowns of big trees across the trail, and there's parts that are overgrown. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of concerning. But then I read another trip report that said, but hikers have been gracious enough to leave ribbons in the trees in places where the trail was overgrown. So I said, okay, good enough for me, that's fine. So then off we went. So the place kind of looks like this. This is a bit higher elevation, but there we are at the trailhead. My wife and I, my wife Rana. And so we're all prepared, happy to go, and we set off on the trail. It was a pleasant first, let's say, 4 miles, and we were a bit tired, but it was beautiful. It was an elevation hike, so we got up kind of in the mountains a bit, beautiful views. Then we descended into the basin, and I expected to find a lake there, but we found a river instead. That's what the river looked like. And so the trail kind of followed the river for a while, and we saw some signs of campsites of people who had stayed there before, and that's always reassuring to see the people that had stayed there before. And then the trail led us to a fork, right? So to the right, the trail continued along the river, and to the left, there was a man-made kind of stick figure with a shirt on and a piece of fungus, weird, usually grows on trees, for a head. So I said, wow, someone really took the trouble of putting this thing together. That must be the way to go. So we went to the left. We took the left fork, and the trail kind of faded out a bit, but then I saw a ribbon in the trees. So I said, okay, I remembered. Oh, the ribbon, that's a sign. We're supposed to go this way. Then we found another ribbon, and another ribbon, and another ribbon, and off we went. So we followed this trail of ribbons for a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And then at one point, we couldn't find another ribbon. And then I was thinking, let's go back and see if we could find the ribbon that we'd last seen. Couldn't find that either. And I realized I had gotten us thoroughly lost in the deep wilderness. But I try not to show my fear, and because my wife, she was already nervous about the trip. And we ended up finding this creek, and I thought, okay, we should follow the creek. Maybe it leads to one of these lakes. So we followed this creek along, and it didn't lead to a lake. It led to more of a large pond, really. But it was getting dark by that time, so I said, we need to set up camp. It's getting dark. So I was really nervous. My wife also was nervous, of course. And we just found a spot. It was like on a briar patch, too. I remember we pitched our tent on some sticker bushes because that was the only flat land in the area. And we were cold and wet and tired and a bit scratched up and bruised. But we managed to make a fire, and we managed to get our clothes changed. We made something to eat, couldn't eat. And we just sat there and we prayed together by the fire and asked God to help us, to rescue us from the situation. We went to sleep that night. Well, we didn't actually go to sleep. We went to the tent. We didn't sleep. And we sat there for a while, and then we just started talking. And we had the deepest conversation. And the Lord used the situation to really bring out some things we had been neglecting to talk about. And we got really close, and we prayed again. And in the morning, we woke up with a kind of a renewed sense of hope, that we had a whole day of sunlight to find our way out. So I plotted our course to get out of the basin. We weren't even concerned about the lakes at this point. To get out of the basin, and I had a compass. So we set off in a south-southwest direction, south-southeast direction. And we walked for a number of miles, and we came to a dead end. It's like a sheer rock wall. And we headed south, and there was a steep hill, too steep to climb. And we were boxed in. Then on the other side, there was just water, a big river. So I didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to do. So we found this clearing in the woods, and we dropped our bags, and we collapsed. We were exhausted after almost 24 hours of being lost. And we just sat there, and we prayed again. We prayed again. And then my wife suggested we get something to eat because we hadn't really eaten anything for the whole time we were out there. And I couldn't eat, so I was restless. So I told my wife, just give me 10 minutes. There's one other place I want to investigate, one other place. Maybe it's our way out. So she reluctantly agreed, and I left. And I climbed this hill, and I looked on the other side. There was nothing there. And I was so discouraged, and I came down the hill. And I remember just standing there in the middle of the woods, about a 5-minute walk from my wife. And I just stood there. I didn't know what else to do. And then there was a rustling in the bushes. And I fully expected like a vicious bear to jump out or something to round off a perfectly horrible trip. But it was a young couple, smiley faces and everything, and they popped out, and I thought I was seeing things. And I remember how I greeted them. I said, "Wow, am I glad to see you?" And they just looked at me kind of strangely. But then I explained the situation, and I asked them, I said, "Are you lost?" Because I knew we were lost, and I figured if they found us, then they must be lost too. And they said, "Well, strangely enough, we weren't lost until just a couple minutes ago, just before we saw you." I said, "Do you think you could find the way back to the trail?" And they said, "We know the direction. I think we could find it." And we did. So we got my wife. We were so happy, I'm telling you. I've never felt elation like that. And so we found our way back to the main trail, and then on the way, even though we were exhausted, we had a great trip back, and we were just talking the whole time. And I remember my wife, the couple's name, Scott and Sarah, and my wife told them, she said, "You're our angels." She said, "You're our angels." And then Sarah stopped, and she turned around and looked. She goes, "You know what? We weren't even supposed to be at this trail today. We were supposed to be hiking another trail down the road to Angel Lake." Yeah. And she said, we passed by the trailhead because we didn't see the sign. And we ended up at this trailhead, and we just decided to stay here and hike this trail, even though they knew nothing about it. And so I said, "Wow, are you serious?" I said, "That's God." And Sarah looked at me, and I didn't know, how their belief system was or anything like that, but she looked at me, and she says, "You're right, that is God." She pointed up. She said, "That was God. That was God." And there's Sarah and Scott, my wife and I, happy. They're at the trailhead. Yeah, so amazing. So this is, back to the verse. "The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand." So the Lord really showed us grace despite my poor judgment, I'll say. He showed us grace through Scott and Sarah, who he sent, he dispatched to save us. And I got to thinking about the whole situation. And I was thinking, the Lord really wants me to trust him more. He really wants me to trust him more, right? We're in a terrible situation. He came through for us, but why does he want us to trust him? Then I thought about it and I said, okay, he wants us to trust him so that ultimately he could use us to be instruments of his grace in other people's lives. And the more we trust him, the more he could use us. So it reminded me of this verse, 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4. Praise be to the God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. So I just felt like that was kind of a revelation that God showed me, that he wants us to trust him for a reason. There's so many benefits to trusting God, but ultimately, we're supposed to share his grace with other people. So I just want to encourage you this morning to put your full trust in the Lord. He knows the answer to all your issues. He sorted it out already. He just wants you to ask him and to trust him for it. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it.